if you are the type of lawyer that wants to move away from hourly billing, if you're the type of lawyer that likes processes and systems, if you're the type of lawyer that likes efficiency and profitability, if you're the type of lawyer that is open to thinking differently about how you show up for your clients, then this is a model that you should consider.
Today on Law Next, Kimberly Bennett, founder of K. Bennett Law, an Atlanta-based boutique trademark and business strategy firm, and a coach herself to social impact entrepreneurs. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, on to this week's interview. Kim Bennett, welcome to Law Next.
Thank you for having me.
Great to speak with you again. This is kind of, in a way, it's sort of a follow-up because I just interviewed you 2 weeks ago, not for this podcast, but for a program I've been doing on Latera TV. And it felt way too short because we were limited to 30 minutes. Not that I'm going to keep you for hours this afternoon, but it felt way too short. I wanted to have a chance to continue the conversation. But excuse me if we go over a little bit of the same ground as well. So first off, how are you doing? How are you holding up during this getting to be way too old pandemic?
Oh, I know, right? Like it's like never ending, and I don't know if I feel like it's never going to end. Yeah. I'm good still. You know, I think it's even like we were saying 2 weeks ago, but really thinking about how focusing on just designing the life that I want. And it's been always something that I talk about, but I think this pandemic has really allowed a lot of us to focus in on that. And so I'm doing good. I can't complain. I feel pretty, best word I can think of, like, you know, grateful or blessed that I still have a business that's been able to function despite everything. Yeah. And so I don't take that for granted at all.
Yeah. Does designing the life that you want mean thinking, or has that gotten you thinking about your law practice and perhaps changes to how you practice law?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it. I think it's important. I've always felt that the way we've designed the 9-to-5 schedule never seemed to be quite right. And I never fully understood it when you thought about, well, if you have to go to the doctor between 9 to 5, and you have to go pick up this between 9 to 5, if you have children, the children go to school, like how do you do all those things at the same time? And I think that idea is being challenged right now a lot. And it's in a good time for all of us just to take a step back and challenge the status quo and really think about how we can create better designing to live, not designing to work, better lives in that fashion. And so, yeah, does that mean it impacts my firm? Potentially. I'm open to all of it. And it's just another time, I guess 10 years from the time that I went out, to really rethink again how I'm showing up. And so it's definitely been a little more top of mind, even more as we get even further in this pandemic. Yeah, well, probably a danger for a lot of professionals during this time is not that they just rethink the 9 to 5, but that they get stuck into a routine of extending their hours even more. I mean, I think, right. I've worked from home for a long time. I've worked on my own for a long time, and I've learned some degree of work-life balance, although my wife would probably chuckle at if she heard me say that, because she thinks I work too much. But, I think a real danger for people who aren't experienced in this is just not knowing how to draw lines between personal time and work time and family time and all those things. Absolutely. And I think what I found, even as someone who's been doing this for about like 10 years, some version of this, and honestly, I traveled a bunch when I was in corporate too. So I worked from a lot of different places, but you're working with others who aren't used to it. So they're setting these probably unrealistic expectations of their work or lacking the boundaries to create a sustainable way of working like this that also impacts how you show up. And so really, I think even for those of us that are really good at doing it in this model, it's to remind ourselves that just because someone's new to it doesn't mean that we need to always change our processes. And we've created those healthy boundaries, and to really look at them and find even ways to speak up more, amplify our healthy boundaries, and speak up about how others need to do the same thing as we designed maybe a different way to show up moving forward.
Yeah. So you do have, as I said in the introduction, you are the founder of Bennett Law. I never know quite now how to describe you because you wear a lot of hats, right? I mean, you're not just a lawyer, and even in your law practice, you're not just a lawyer. You're an advisor as well to your clients. So how do you describe yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think this is probably not surprising that I don't feel that I fit in the traditional box, and I never really have. And I went into law school knowing that, but not quite sure what the path was going to be for me, even when I was a PhD student as well. And so I look at myself as a social impact business professional that really is helping other social impact brands really amplify their legacy. And that shows up, one of which ways is with my legal expertise, but also business. I ran several businesses. And, so I bring that to the table. I have my psych background. I bring that to the table. So I really just say I bring my unique set of skills to help drive realistic and sustainable and scalable business outcomes for the clients that I serve that are hopefully serving really good missions and visions for the future of our society.
And how do you define that? What kinds of businesses are you looking to work with that are social impact businesses?
Sure. So I probably our core is already established businesses that are scaling from 6 to 7 and beyond figures of annual revenue. So they're in that spot where they've done some things, they've established their business structure, but maybe they didn't dot all their I's and cross all their T's, or they are really looking to take a bigger, bolder step with how they are leveraging their IP portfolio, partnerships, licensing, growing it out bigger, and bringing on teams to support that vision. So we sit in that because we are the people that help them build out their legal operations. We help them build out some of their business operations, really help them think about legal not just as the reactive piece of your business, but as a proactive support and growth piece to help them scale sustainably. So that looks like, IP work, that looks like people operations work, and just overall systems and streamlining work as well.
Yeah. And how do you define the social impact part of it? I mean, what kinds of businesses are you hoping to work with or wanting to work with?
That's a good question. I looking for businesses that fit in wanting to create structural changes in maybe the way educational systems are set up, or the way they fund their business, right? So that they can have, so not necessarily nonprofits. I do work with nonprofits, but businesses that have a bigger, bolder vision than just making profit, that they're looking to create change in education, in their profession, like lawyers, right? That are looking to create societal change around justice. So I don't look at it in one particular industry for the firm, but really about the impact that they're trying to create in society. So whether that's some structural, some systems, whether that looks like access to justice, whether that looks like access to resources that someone didn't have, that looks like supporting and amplifying marginalized communities, whether that looks like growing a business that in a traditional community maybe that you don't see. So really trying to bring maybe financial resources to underprivileged individuals, right? And so whether they're for-profit or not for-profit, it's really those organizations that are trying to do good in the world.
Yeah. What's your backstory? I mean, did you always want to be a lawyer? At what point did you want to be a lawyer? How did you get to where you are today?
Definitely did not always want to be a lawyer. My father's a lawyer, and so I'm a second generation lawyer. And I actually started in labor, turns out, which I actually didn't want to do either. Yeah. But my father's a labor attorney, and so going to
management
a dual degree
or union
program,
or
management side. So, which you don't find a lot of us actually anymore, and particularly you don't find a lot of minorities and minority women. So, right. Although I would say I have had some great mentors along the way that are, but
I used to be a union lawyer.
Look at that! I don't think I knew that. Yep. Well, I like to say we're on the same side, trying to push forward.
Yeah.
So I mean, even I like to help organizations, talking about my firm, that want to be people first and people forward, right? And I know from a union side, that's sometimes you're like, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
Are you trying to do union avoidance? But really, it's trying to push back on management to do the right thing and work with organizations that really care about doing the right thing. But I value unions tremendously. But so yeah, my backstory, I didn't really want to be a lawyer. Love working with people, went to Spelman College in Georgia. Undergrad, I was actually went in, my darling story was psych pre-med Spanish minor. So that's what I graduated with, actually. So I have an undergrad degree in psychology with a pre-med concentration. So 2 classes off of biochem minor and a minor in Spanish. And I went into undergrad wanting to know I wanted to help people and work with people and not sure where that was going to land me, but that psychology seemed like the right place. And then maybe I want to be a doctor. And then I remember telling my parents, I want to be a doctor. Then they told all of their friends I was going to be a doctor. And when I realized, I don't want to be a doctor because I don't like blood, I felt the tremendous pressure not to let that go. So I actually went through it all, even sat for the MCAT, and then left midway. So that's a little bit of my backstory.
Yeah.
That I've done a lot of education. Yeah. Decided on my path in between.
Yeah. And how did you come to start your own firm?
So I came out right before the market crash. I came out in 2007. I actually went into law school, like I was saying, as a dual degree. The first year of my law school, I was a traditional law student with the goal of getting into a dual degree program my second year. And so the dual degree was in law and psychology. And so that program is a 7-year program. So I knew I was going to be in law school for a while. But midway through, I was like, this is not exactly what I expected. And petitioned with a few of us to get out a little bit early. So I got out of law school in 5 years, even though it was supposed to be 6. We got in 5, came out in 2007, was still in a dual degree program working. Then the market crashed. And I was working as a lawyer, as well as still in grad school, and the market crashed. And even as a lawyer, it's always been hard when you were a dual degree student to find traditional, whatever that looks like, but was traditional legal experiences that really respected that I had this other skill set that I can bring to the table.
Right.
So when I went into in-house early, because they understood it a bit better. And then when the market crashed, all my opportunities for in-house went away. So I was still in school. My opportunities for in-house went away, and growth in in-house really kind of went away. And then it was really about, what am I going to do? So then a couple of years after not really being sure of what was that going to look like, I went out on my own in 2010. So in 2010 is where I started this journey. And we're here 10 years later, going through ebbs and flows and dealing with a down market and coming out of that and learning how to still grow my career despite all of that.
Yeah. I've seen you speak. I've heard you speak. We've talked before. And I know that one of the, you wouldn't be putting words in your mouth to say that you think the traditional form of law practice is broken in various ways. And I'm wondering at what point you started to feel that. I mean, was that something you were aware of as you were founding your firm and thinking about as you were founding your firm and decided to try and address in the way you structured your firm, or was it something you learned as you started to build the firm?
I would say probably as I started to build it. Although when I was in law school, I felt, as I was saying before, this. Maybe because I was in a dual degree program, but I always felt like, you want me to fit in this box that didn't quite fit with what I was trying to do, but I know there's a need for what I was trying to do. At the time, it was different, and I will say that. But even in law school, it felt like I was always slightly different than those that were in there and kind of the path that people wanted to take. I didn't see big law as like a healthy path. Yeah. And then trying to design this law psychology piece was there wasn't a lot of examples out there for me the way that I thought about it. And then when I went out in 2010, I just went with what I knew, which was traditional law firm, which was bill by the hour, collect a retainer, get all the different types of clients. And I quickly realized that wasn't working, right? Like I lost money. I felt a bit more overwhelmed than I wanted to. I felt like I was always trying to figure things out, and I didn't like that feeling. And so pretty soon after starting my own firm, I was or going out, I would say, I don't know if I didn't formalize it at that point, but soon after going out, I realized this way of doing it, billing by the hour, not knowing when you're going to get paid, and not feeling a little bit of overwhelmed and feeling like this the relationship with the client is off. And in-house, it didn't feel that way. And so I did want to get a little bit of that in-house feeling with the people that I worked with, and took money out of being the central part of our conversation.
Yeah.
And so probably within the first year, I started moving to a different model. Didn't have a name for it, but knew I was like, I'm not doing it this way anymore.
Yeah. Well, you've given it a name. You've given it a name since then, and I mean, you have become a leading proponent of subscription-based legal services. How was it you came upon that model? How did you discover it?
I pitched one day to a client. Literally, I was tired of, like I said, so going back to when I came out, brought a bunch of clients in, thought I was doing really well, and then kept on coming against this. And I think some of it was being a young attorney, not understanding how to price yourself.
Yeah.
But then coming up against pricing out, giving a price, saying this is going to be the retainer, that it will be need to be replenished. And the replenishment was not happening the way I thought they would. And then not being able to get out of cases felt really stressful. Like it was, you're in a down market. You're like, well, I still have to work with these clients that I'm not getting paid for and still want to serve them right. And I don't want to jeopardize my license. Like this can't be the way. And then I had the opportunity and I pitched to a business client about, hey, what if I just showed up for this amount of money every month and did stuff? Not quite like that, a little bit better, but basically. And they were like, sure. And they said sure very fast. And so I will say, I thought, I'm a negotiator, right? We're labor folks. So we negotiate all the time. And I was like, oh, you took my first offer? Darn. But
yeah, right.
That started.
Should have asked for more.
Right. But that started myself on the path of saying, that was a very easy yes. What if I can get more of those easy yeses again?
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. And that was 2010, 2011, soon after.
So it's essential, in a way, it's the in-house model adapted to being an outside counsel.
Right. So I think that's where a little bit of, it was the in-house mindset where like, I'm not, we tracked our time, but we were just, we're working for the organization. Yeah. And we didn't track time for billing. We tracked time for more like productivity, what we were working on, where our time, where our attention management was at, and less about, I need to like bill by these many hours or 1/6. It just was silly to me. And so it came from that. But then when I went into it more and I saw a lot of the general, like the in-house counsel models, and I will say I did model a little bit off of that, which was a lot of it was hourly based. And then it kept on feeling like this friction that it wasn't matching up with what I was saying, kept on being really focused on this hourly piece. And then when I broke the hourly out of it and I realized what was I really doing, it opened up a lot more possibility. So once I broke, yes, it was like first the in-house experience, first losing money, then pitching, then like bringing in my experiences. How can I show up best for my clients? Still having this hourly friction, broke off the hourly. And then from there, it took off.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen this from time to time over the years. People doing it, people offering sort of outside counsel services on a flat fee, recurring fee basis, something like that. How does it work for you? What if I'm a client and I come to you and we enter into a subscription relationship? What am I getting and what am I not getting?
Right. So we don't do everything, and we're pretty clear about that. And I try to remind, if ever a client feels that way, we are a bit of an issue spotter for them, right? So this isn't the thing for a lot of people who tell me, well, I can't do it in this area of law. I'm not telling you to be an expert in those areas, but you can help clients guide them in ways that, particularly for solos and smalls, when you're dealing with, you might be the only attorney someone may ever meet. How can you really show them the value of this entire industry in ways that maybe they never understood, because we've done a terrible job of explaining how we are not just reactive, right? We can actually be proactive parts of your life or your business. And so for us, we don't do everything. As an example, we don't litigate, right? It's not something we do. So, but if litigation comes up, we can partner with a litigation firm. And because we are technically in-house, we bring outside counsel to do the litigation, right? Yep. And we can manage them. We can interact. We can be the liaison like I would as in-house. And so things like that. I sit on team meetings, right? We strategize on growth for organizations. We think about future plans, because all of that will lead to what are the legal needs that's going to bring about. And even if it's not something that we focus on, we can then start sourcing them out so that they can reduce issues. So if we focus on brand and people and they're doing something in real estate, well, I can go and find a real estate attorney to do the work. The organization still, it's still a client. The outside counsel is the client is the organization, not me, right?
Yeah.
But we help provide more of what looks like more consistent operations around, in our world, people and brand. But in other people's world, it's whatever that looks like, in family law and like divorce or in estate planning, or if you're a litigator, okay, around litigation, right? You just really rethink how you're showing up for your clients. And so for my clients, when they have additional work that is part of what we do, they just activate a new project. And that's what we do.
Yeah. Us lawyers have so much trouble not thinking about time. So how do you balance the time of that? I mean, if you've got a subscription client who's calling you every day with a new problem, is that okay? Or how do you deal with that?
I mean, I think it's like any other thing. For me, if you have those boundary issues with hourly, you're going to have those boundary issues with subscription.
Yeah,
like
it's not going to take that away. For it.
Right. But it doesn't take away from it being disruptive and maybe minimizing your impact or really not solving the client's problems, because the client is still very much in a reactive mindset. Yeah. And so for me, first of all, we call on the clients that are more proactive clients. Doesn't mean everyone's there. Doesn't mean they don't see legal as reactive still. But we really do work on establishing us as a support or help or growth piece of the business, and not just a reactive, I come when there's an issue piece of the business. So we are ahead of a lot of the conversations. So we actually don't have clients that call us every single day, right? They're running their businesses, or they're, like I tell, like when I'm coaching in family law or something else, like they're running their lives, right? They don't, if they're in that space, they're calling you every day, something else is happening, and we need to address the something else, right? Lack of trust, fear, really stressed out. Let's address that. Right? Because that doesn't take from what I need to do, or it might impact my ability to serve them really well. So let's solve that issue. But for the most part, no, we don't have those issues, right? Clients have the ability to schedule us when they want to. They can ping us if it ever feels like it's reaching points that maybe are not within the structure that we set out. Then we just have a conversation. Yeah. We try to really keep those lines of communication open, but it is about setting boundaries and expectations from the beginning. So if you haven't done that before, I think the pandemic is a great time to start setting some.
Right. And you do, if I have this right, you do a workshop with lawyers to help them figure out how to do this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I help them design their signature subscription service. And so I do that in several different ways, whether they want to do it as like one-to-one. I do a firm design, as well as I do like firm design with larger firms, or if it's like a solo small and they want to come through the workshop, that is like a 30-day incubator. We've done them as 1 days and gotten people done in 1 day, but we also do them now like 30-day incubators, where you spend 30 days really going through a strategic design process to take you from an idea to a launch subscription.
Yeah. So how does a lawyer figure out whether this kind of a model can work for them?
Yeah, I would say if you are the type of lawyer that wants to move away from hourly billing, if you're the type of lawyer that likes processes and systems, if you're the type of lawyer that likes efficiency and profitability, if you're the type of lawyer that is open to thinking differently about how you show up for your clients, and this is a model that you should consider.
We'll get back to my interview in just a moment, but first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. Now, let's get back to this week's interview. I think one of the ways that you think differently about how you show up with your clients is you see that relationship as much more of, well, exactly that, as a relationship. You're more involved with the client's business perhaps than some lawyers might traditionally be. Is that Is that important to you? Is that part of the way that you see yourself as disrupting law practice?
I think it's important for sure. And I think it's important whether you're on the business side or you're on the individual side. And I think there is a big gap in maybe, and sometimes it's true, in like sometimes empathy that we can provide our clients. And some of that does require us to go outside of this lawyer box, which in the business world, it looks like lawyers always saying, no, you can't do this. No, that's not going to work. No, instead it's, hey, here are just like we're taught in law school, here are your options. You kind of got to make the best decision based off of a set of circumstances or a set of facts, given the law. And so I believe those that also, as a factor to this, believe in building relationships. They don't have to be long-term relationships, but believe in the power of having a trusted relationship as an advisor to your client, whether individual or business, then this is a model for you, right? You don't have to do it on as in depth, but it doesn't take away from being trusted, being the advisor, whether you're doing a subscription for $95 a month or you're doing something for thousands of dollars a month. At the end, you're still trying to take them through a certain journey. And if you are so disconnected from what's happening with them, I think that's a problem. And I will say, back in law school, when I thought about what were some of the issues with law and why we're having some friction on how law can really solve bigger issues, I really believe in a systems approach to solving a lot of problems. I think a great example would be in our educational system. We see some friction happening right now where the traditional structure isn't working in a pandemic. And it's not that children can't learn digitally. It's just the way our system has been structured is for them not to be able to learn digitally, right? Like we're not really thinking about all of the systems that are impacting the current child, that education is one. And so school systems are having a problem because maybe now if they don't go to school, they don't eat. But why, we're again not taking a systems approach to solving problems. And so for me, when I look at my clients, it's like, how can I take a systems approach to really solving what their needs are? And even if it doesn't have to be me, I can help be the conduit, or I can be a better listener, or I can actually see, well, maybe this is an issue that if we came in earlier, we can help minimize, maybe not eliminate, but minimize. And so I do think relationships are important.
Yeah. So the way lawyers charge for their time is broken. In some cases, the way lawyers have relationships or don't have relationships with their clients is broken. What else do you think is broken about sort of the traditional approach to practicing law? What else do you talk about when you counsel lawyers about innovating their practices and improving their practices?
I think, there's
so many.
There's so many things. I think as an industry, we need to really think about, a great example is that bar exam. I mean, if the bar exam is not showing you some of the faults in it in these last couple of months, I'm not sure if as an industry, if we don't really address them, where is that going to leave us? Because those are the people that are coming in to continue this industry and the legacy of this industry. And we are putting them at such a big disadvantage right now for something that as a everything but a dissertation trained in clinical psychology, we know what the studies show us about test taking. Like we know that test taking is not always a great doesn't necessarily show you success, right?
Right.
But yet and still, we effectively use this hazing way to bring people into a profession when there could be a better way. Let's just train people up better. Let's give them actually more mentorship. So what's broken? I think the lack of mentorship in our industry. And I don't necessarily know it has to be, I don't believe in free, right? I don't believe in free labor. I think mentorship though. I think there is a training opportunity that's missed. As someone who came out, it did feel like I went into in-house, so I had that. But when I went into private, it did feel a little bit like you were left on your own. And is that how it should be? So I think those coming into it, I think the bar exam, that entire process is broken. I think it makes no sense. I think this is going to be controversial. I think state bars don't make any sense. I think for purposes of knowing who's here, but not purposes of saying who can practice in that state. I think we really need to think through much more globally, or how people operate and move, how businesses operate, how people operate, the state by state specificity that we have. I think there are better ways we can design for it given today's society and economy.
Yeah,
Go
on
ahead.
the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, on the bar exam, it's just hard to believe that that there's not going to be some radical change in the wake of all of this. I mean, I was on a call just this morning with a state Supreme Court justice. It was a conference call with a state Supreme Court justice who was talking about how broken the system is. Now, happens to be a fairly liberal state Supreme Court justice, but still, if it's at that level that bar officials are recognizing how broken the system is, I really think that we're going to see some change on the whole bar admission process. And
I hope so. It makes no sense. I don't get it. I mean, what is it serving at this point? I mean, what is the bar, like, what is it actually doing? If you need me to be competent in a certain area of the law after coming to law school, if you're saying that's not enough, okay, so then what else do I need to do? Do I need to be trained? Do I need more, because I think that's what it is. Sure, we can all use more training because we know we come out of law school without all of the, at least I've been out of law school for, I don't know, over a decade, beyond that. And at that point, I had a great professor who told me to take practical classes. But outside of that, where's the practical piece? So like let's do that. Let's, design for where people are today. Let's not use these archaic structures. I mean, investing in firms, that's a whole nother area that I think is broken. If we don't, if at some point there's going to be a decision probably that says this monopoly that we've held is probably not going to be able to remain. And if we keep on being afraid of the legal zooms out instead of really embracing that they've showed us we've missed an opportunity and there's an opportunity for us to really serve more people in better ways, then we're gonna stay stuck, and people are gonna just circumvent the value because we're going to keep on not solving for the lack of access to justice people have when it comes to engaging legal services.
Yeah, and as you well know, there's certainly a number of initiatives around the country focused on revisiting or reforming those archaic rules around investment in law practice and ownership of law practice. As a matter of fact, as you and I speak, I know the Utah Supreme Court is scheduled to take a vote later this week on what they had already put out there as proposed rules, but that will radically change the rules in that state. Yep. And so things are definitely happening on that front. Do you think the pandemic is going to, there's been a lot of talk, it's going to accelerate lawyers' use of technology and all that. I mean, do you think it's going to accelerate these bigger changes?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think we are a slow to move industry. And so the pandemic got people to start saying, maybe I should get electronic signatures, which has been something that's been around for a long time. So do I think we're going to have, I would love it. So I would love to be proven wrong, to see drastic, massive overhaul. I think if we can continue to operate in the way we do, we're going to get the exact same results. So if we truly want different results, we must make radical change. But that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of lawyers who have been practicing for 20, 30, 40, 50 years to say, oh, well, I did it that way. We're not doing it like that anymore. That's okay. It takes even the new lawyers who just came out and took a bar 2 years ago to say, oh, well, yes, I had to do it. But you know what? Moving forward, no one else needs to do it. It really takes then also the, consumers of our services to say, we're tired. And I think they have been saying that with their money and their dollars, but maybe, them, standing up a little bit more. But I hope that we have those changes. Do I think it's going to happen? I'm skeptical, but I'm definitely there to support those initiatives. As much as I can be involved in them, I'm ready to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at this a whole lot longer than you, and I have to say I'm actually more cautiously optimistic, I guess, but I'm definitely more optimistic, I think, than I've ever been. I mean, there's certain things like lawyers getting rid of the billable hour that I've been hearing about for as long as I've been practicing, and it hasn't happened yet. But I do think we are on the verge of some significant changes, and at least in the regulatory environment. I think that could really be significant going forward. But yeah, we'll wait and see. And even that will come slowly, I think. But yeah. One area that you and I had started to talk about when we talked a couple of weeks ago that I wanted to talk a little bit more about is another area where there hasn't been great change, which is in diversity in the profession. Mm-hmm. And obviously you are a Black woman professional, and I was asking you a couple of weeks ago when we talked about with some of the people that you work with as a coach and as a business advisor, how you encourage them to enhance their own opportunities in the profession. We talked about that a little bit. Since we talked, the ABA came out with its now annual, I guess, report on the legal profession. And the numbers are incredibly dismal, I think, in terms of diversity. I mean, one of the in terms of women lawyers in the profession, there's been some growth, but over the last 10 years, it's the number of women lawyers has gone from 31% to 37%, which is certainly not phenomenal growth. Even more shockingly, the number of lawyers of color grew less than 3% over the last decade. From it's 11.4% of all lawyers in 2010 to 14% in 2020. The number of Black lawyers hasn't budged at all in the last decade. 5% of lawyers are Black, according to the ABA statistics. Do you have any thoughts on what the legal profession can be doing? What we as legal professionals can be doing to change this situation?
So, I mean, I think it starts with law school, coming into law. So I'll say, and I can't remember if we talked about this story, but coming to law school, I went into law school and I had a student that was studying to be a lawyer, come into a Halloween party in blackface and really have claim to have no idea why that was problematic. We had students in law school call Black students the N-word. We in my law school, we had a big, for lack of a better word, like, what's the word I want to use? We really stood up to some of what was happening to the Black students in law school. And when that's the case, I think you're always, even at entry into the thing that you need to do to get into the profession is problematic, you're going to have problematic outcomes after that. So until really we take the position as an industry that we have to, and we're having more of the conversation, but like designing differently, it's going to be tough, right? We're going to have so many people that come into this profession, and it's okay if you have different viewpoints. I'm not looking for that, but I'm looking for at some baseline, right, what's to be expected. When you have the State Bar of Texas have a person that's leading them, say, making problematic statements, I'm not sure you're going to have a hard time continuing to show people that you can create change in an industry that's so stuck, right? Yeah. And so as an industry, as a profession, we need to be bolder about how we talk about the issues that are popping up around racism and racial justice, and it not just be talking points. It needs to be really taken on head on at the law school level, at undergrad into law school, but that pathway to the students that are coming in, what are the expectations of those that are going to be moving this legal industry forward, and how are you going to show up? And we can all have different ways of solving problems. That's not what I'm asking for, but there's some baseline set of expectations that I think we need to start pushing and pressing upon people. If you don't understand the history of blackface and why that's problematic as you going into law school, we have a problem, right? Yeah. And if we can't have certain conversations, even if it's a difference of opinion on him, that's it. So I would say, it starts there. I was in one of 7 Black students in my law school. There weren't a lot of us there, right? And I know them all, and let me say, one of 7 in my class, there was a few more in the law school, and we were still a smaller law school. But I think if we don't really address inequities and across the board, getting into school, being in there, the support structures that are a part of it, I don't necessarily think it's a bar exam issue, which I've seen people write about, whether changing the bar exam, eliminating means you get more, Black and people of color attorneys. I think it's beyond that. That's one symptom of a bigger problem, right? It's not the test. The test does so many other things that are wrong. But until we as a profession really address the way our profession has been designed, we have a Black Bar Association and National Bar Association because we were excluded, right? We have Black Women Lawyers Association because we were excluded from the Women's Lawyers Association. So until we have those conversations as a profession, we're going to continue to have these issues.
Yeah. So it's in part a pipeline issue in terms of we need to get more people coming into law school in the first place and then coming into the profession out of law school. But that all begs the larger question of how we make this profession one that's more, inviting to.
Yeah, I think it's by design. I think law school by design is giving the outcomes that we see. So if we want it to be different, we have to design it differently. The pipeline is designed to create the outcomes that it has, right? And until we redesign it, we're going to continue to have the same things happen.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think these are reflected in the ABA numbers I was just talking about, but if I'm remembering correctly, there was an ABA report. I think it was an ABA report that came out earlier this year or last year at some point on women in the profession that talked about, I think the fact of the matter is that many more women are coming into the profession now, but they're not staying in the profession because they're encountering obstacles to getting ahead, and they're encountering pretty much standard sexism and misogyny in law firm structure. And so I wonder if one of the things I wonder is whether alternative practice models like you've developed for yourself are a way of encouraging a greater diversity of people to stay in the profession, at least once they get into the profession. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would love to say I don't necessarily know if I think I'm alternative because of what the status quo is, right? But I would love us to just break free of that and just to design better businesses, period, right? I do believe we've designed again, same idea with law school. Law firms are putting out exactly what they were designed to put out. Unhappy, unhealthy, overwhelmed lawyers, right? Our stats show this. And until we decide to do it differently, and also those that engage services that are like the large organizations and corporations start saying, we're actually looking for something different, you're going to get some of that repeat behavior. But I believe if we design better businesses that happen to be provider of legal services, right? We move away from this idea that yes, I understand we're coming to business with a license that we have to manage and maintain, and there are reasons for it, but we're still a business. And this disconnect that we keep on wanting to build around it, I just don't believe is true. Maybe there's a higher set of standards that we have to do, but you still need some basic business principles, some basic, building a people first principle, right? We're bringing our labor pieces in here and building a healthy business. So I believe if those that come into this profession, and I think some of the younger lawyers are really pushing this a bit more now, not all because they see the traditional path, but to say, I want to design something differently, and that we design better, medium and large size businesses that happen to be delivering legal services, we will see better outcomes. Because until then, we are putting out the exact outcomes that this system has been designed to create. Women that leave early, minorities that have a hard time in growth, or none at all, lawyers that have heavy substance abuse issues, lawyers that are, have high rates of suicide. So if we want different outcomes, we must design something better. Different, break free of what it was before, break free of the idea that this JD is that special. It brings you something, but it's really meant to do of service. And let's move back to some of those thoughts and mindsets. And I think until we break some of those traditional mindsets, we're going to be struggling with this for a little bit.
Yeah. I think even lawyers who perhaps want to break free are inhibited by fear. And with you, I mean, as you described kind of how you came into this model that you use, it was a little bit by accident, I guess. And then
Sure.
it grew and evolved from there. It's a whole different thing for somebody to say, I've got a practice now. I'm struggling. Maybe it's not the best model, but I'm just afraid to change. I'm afraid to try different things. How do lawyers get past that, just that fear of change, or that fear of trying to make change?
I think the first step is recognizing it, right? I think we don't recognize it sometimes as fear all of the time. It's just like, well, that's how I was always doing it. Okay, ask yourself why, and ask yourself why again, and ask yourself why again. And is it leading you to the life that you want? To me, the firm is not meant to be the end all be all. It's to drive your life, right? Like we're designed to live. And if the firm is not helping you design a happy life to live, then we need to change it, right? We need to rethink it. And so the opportunity to design something better exists if we're willing to embrace it. But I do think fear stops a lot of people. But the first thing is recognizing that there's something not working, thinking about what it could look like if you designed a life that you wanted. And then what if you stop doing the stuff you hate and start doing the stuff you loved, right? What could that look like? Maybe there's no one out there doing it, or maybe there are. And if there's no one out there, okay, well, then getting the support around you to help you do it is also important. And I think in this profession, we are very much driven by the idea that we need to do it on our own. And I'll put something out there as someone who started in the solo space and used to glorify it, I think, way too much, even though that's not at my core who I am. I don't think the solopreneur life is really the right life. I don't. I think that leads to unhealthiness and thinking that we can do all the things. I believe the issue why a lot of people go into solo and small, well, solo mainly too, is because they didn't like the big law experience or the big business experience. So let's design better, bigger, medium-sized businesses. Let's not think that the only answer is to work on our own and be overworked and overwhelmed. And so if we can shift away from, we have to do it on our own, bring in the support, identify really what we want in life, and then start designing for that, I believe it's there for everyone to achieve. It's just taking that small step and getting the support along that process.
Yeah, that's really an interesting thought. I don't think I've ever quite thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right. The solo mode of practice, the solo mode of doing anything is a difficult way to work. You need collaboration. You need the support of other people, and if firms that are dysfunctional. They're not dysfunctional by virtue of the fact that they have a number of people working at them. They're dysfunctional by virtue of the fact that they're poorly organized and need to rethink how they operate. So that's right. That's great.
And I also think,
just
as a follow-up,
yeah.
I also think a lot of us that say we're solos, like I don't say that. I try to really never say that anymore. We're not.
Yeah.
And the successful ones are not, but they say they're solo. And I would love for us to change the language, because it puts this false sense, particularly for newer attorneys when they come out. And even those that are struggling to say, well, they're doing it on their own, why can't I? They're not. Like for me, even in the beginning, I brought in, practice management software, which even though I'm doing it, that solved the problem of several things that if I kept on doing on my own, then I brought in, bookkeeper or receptionist, or I brought in someone to do marketing, even if it's on a small scale, because there's only 24 hours in a day. And if we focus on our time in that way, we're going to lead to these unhealthy practices. So I would love for those of us out there that if you truly are a solo, question it, because maybe that's why you're overworked and overwhelmed. And then maybe you're really not. And then identify, even if they don't have the employee status, that you're still not doing it on your own. And let's amplify that more.
Right. And you're part of a community of innovative legal tech aficionados there in the Atlanta area, right?
Yeah.
Does that help? Is that something that can help others?
Sure. I would say Atlanta. So Atlanta Legal Tech, what you're referring to, is our
right.
organization that we started, I guess 3 or 4 years ago now. It developed out of a meetup, and we started just taking you go to these great conferences, and I'm a lover of the big conferences. You and I go to all the same ones, I think, at this point, or most of them, the big ones at least, and they're great and they're super inspirational. But then you leave and you're all inspired, but you take no action. And I'm a type of person that likes to take action. And so we started doing these smaller boutique events where we take what we learned and what we're inspired by and put it into action in our current practices so that we can move our lives forward, our industry forward, our businesses forward. And so that's what Atlanta Legal Tech grew from. And as we continue to grow and evolve into, our core pillars, one of which is diversity and inclusion, it's really trying to say, what is the reason for technology? Technology is meant to aid in something else, right? It's not the end of the story. It's really the beginning and the foundation. And so, but I think having that community support of people that want to do it differently, that are wanting to design in interesting ways like you want to, and that will help push you and support you is important. And that's been one of the things that's helped me along the way, is recognizing I'm not doing it on my own, that I have support around me, whether that's family, friends, colleagues, coaches, masterminds, right? Organizations that I'm a part of, because that's how we grow better. And that's how we really leverage our collective genius to solve bigger problems.
Yeah. Well, Kim, anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up today? Anything else you're working on these days?
No, just still working on, I'm always working on efficiencies, and really helping others see how to design better lives, right? And that happens to look like, if we're in this space of building businesses, what that looks like on the subscription side. So I'm enjoying doing my firm and building out my team there, and then also enjoying watching others embrace the opportunity to ditch the unhealthy mindsets and models of a legal industry and professional service industry in general, and move towards something that's much more healthier and sustainable. So
all right.
It's been awesome chatting.
It's been awesome chatting. And if there's any lawyers who've been listening out there today and they say, gee, I want to find out more about subscription services or alternative ways of designing my fees, how can they do that? How can they get in touch with you or get some training on that?
Sure. So you can go to either one of my sites because they'll direct you to the right way. But the letter K, Bennett, Bennett law.com. It's my website, and it'll direct you to that one. Or you can go direct to, it's modernlegalcollective.com, but that's probably switching soon. But modernlegalcollective.com, and K Bennett Law, though. K Bennett Law, you'll always be able to get there. That talks about what it looks like if you're ready to ditch the billable hour and design your signature subscription service.
Great. Well, thank you for talking to me for the second time in 2 weeks. I'm really honored to have had this opportunity to talk to you again, as well as the first time. So I really appreciate it. And I hope you stay well and healthy.
Thank you.
So we've been talking with Kimberly Bennett, the founder of K Bennett Law. And thanks, as always, to Ben Ambrogi for producing and editing this show. Thanks to all of you for listening today. This is Law Next. I'm Bob Ambrogi. Thanks for listening.